With the, yeah, thank you.
Once I get to do that to somebody else.
We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you'll remain standing after that, we'll have a prayer. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll have a prayer by Father Matt Marney.
Heavenly Father, we lift up the county commissioners of Reno County, Kansas before you today. Grant them wisdom and discernment as they make decisions that impact our community. May they always act with integrity and fairness, seeking the best for all residents. Guide their deliberations and help them to serve with humility and dedication. May their actions reflect your values of justice and compassion. We pray for strength and perseverance and for a spirit of unity and cooperation among them as they work to build a better future for Reno County and its residents. We ask this in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ and in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Father Matt, for taking the time to be with us. Next on our agenda, I want to thank everybody for being here today. and taking the time to be with us. With that, we have some proclamations to read. And the first one, proclamation to be read, 3A, National Child Abuse Prevention. And this one is, whereas our children are our most valuable resources and will shape the future of Reno County, Kansas, whereas childhood trauma, including abuse and neglect, is a serious problem affecting every segment of our community, and finding solutions requires input and action from everyone. And whereas childhood trauma can have long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects that have lasting consequences for victims of abuse, and whereas protective factors are conditions that reduce or eliminate risk and promote the social and emotional development of well-being of children, and whereas effective child abuse prevention activities succeed because of the partnerships created between child welfare professionals, education, health, community and faith-based organizations, businesses, law enforcement agencies, and families, and whereas communities must make every effort to promote programs and activities that build strong children and families, and whereas we acknowledge that we must work together as a community in partnership to build awareness about child abuse and contribute to promoting the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment, and whereas prevention remains the best defense for our children and families. Now, therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Reno County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2025 to be National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and urge all citizens to recognize this month by dedicating themselves to the task of improving the quality of life for all children and families. And then it's witnessed by us and our signatures. If you want to sign. The other proclamation we have to be read this morning is the week of the young child. Whereas the Early Childhood Council and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association of Education of Young Children, are celebrating the week of the young child, April 13th through the 19th, 2025. And whereas these organizations are working to improve early learning opportunities, which are crucial to the growth and development of young children and to building better futures for everyone in Reno County. And whereas all young children and their families across the county and Reno County deserve access to high-quality early education and care, and whereas in recognizing and supporting the people, programs, and policies that are committed to high-quality early childhood education as the right choice for kids. Now, therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Reno County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of April 13th through the 19th, 2025, as Week of the Young Child, and encourage all citizens to work to make good investment in early childhood in Reno County, Kansas. And then witnessed and signed by us, the commissioners. And with that,
If they want to make any comments, and then like Jubilee will take pictures with you guys.
all right.
Well,
Any comments?
I just want to say thank you. April is going to be a super busy month for all the early childhood programs here in Reno County. The Week of the Young Child, there's an event every day for that week around Hutchinson. So watch for the signs. And then we are with the Kansas Children's Service League, and they our program is the Kansas chapter for Prevent Child Abuse America. And so every April, every year, we are super busy. Next Friday, April the 4th, is Wear Blue Day. So if you want to bring awareness to child abuse prevention, we're going to encourage you to wear blue. So thank you very much.
I started
You're,
early.
you are on the ball. I appreciate it. You had a lot to read this morning, so I appreciate that too. Thank you.
You want to come forward? And we're short this morning, so we'll even things up a little bit.
All right. Perfect. Okay, got it.
Thank you for what you do.
You're welcome.
Our next item calls for public comment on items not on the agenda. So if there is somebody who wants to make a comment, we ask that you try to stay within 5 minutes and state your name, maybe an address so we know where you're located in the county.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Don Rogers. I just want to put everybody at ease. This is a positive comment from 2 weeks ago's meeting. I've been in the community over 40 years and owned 3 different businesses. Worked for Kraus Plow for 15 years. Had the opportunity to work for Stutes and Refuse for 10 years when we went into the recycling. And for the last 19 years, I've been the owner of Wells Aircraft out at your airport. Mr. Pryor, Mr. Fast were in last week. I happened to be on a charter flight doing some pilot services, so I wasn't able to be here in person. But I'd also like to state that these guys do an awesome job because I'm one of the watchers every week or every 2 weeks. So I appreciate that opportunity when we're busy. I'm at a different airport. I can tune in and watch your meetings. And you all look the same. As you all struggled with the opportunity to fund or the thought of what that Senior Open does for us, it's difficult to really put dollars and cents to it, and I think you struggled a little bit with that. But I'd like just to tell you a little about the impact that I've seen in the 19 years of owning the airport. That airport brings in destination traffic, so they have to have a reason to come here. We want to make that reason that they do more business with the businesses that are here, which I share your sentiments from the meeting 2 weeks ago. Randy did a great job in including what the sales impact was. But what has happened since 2006 that we really can't qualify, and that is the amount of traffic that Prairie Dunes continues to bring in with their national membership expansion. I think Mr. Pryor mentioned it a little bit. They've opened that up, but for the airport, for our funding from the state and the FAA, it comes from traffic. If we get traffic in, that's the dollars that the city of Hutch gets to put in their budgets for the airport. So it's a positive, and it's been a continued positive with them. Hoorah Ranch that we share part of the county with. They're also in Kingman County, but guess what? We have the bigger airports, so those jets are landing here. They're hunting at Hoorah Ranch, which is another big user of the airport. And I think that's a piece that's hard to put a dollar amount on, but I know the businesses that we support, you know, the rental car companies you mentioned, are we keeping that business here? We do catering for all these jets that come in. So Downtown Sampler, Carrots Crossing, Dillon's, DJ Liquors, of course it's not for the pilots, all get that business gets, we buy supplies to provide to those arriving jets that come in the community. Prairie Dunes, when they opened their national membership, might not have been popular to the locals, but it has been an impact because those people come, and as you indicated in your meeting, they look, they see, they might want to come back. And I'm here to say since 2006, I think they are doing that. And when it was announced that 2029 was coming, many of the customers that we service with Cirrus Aircraft, we are a certified repair station for Cirrus Aircraft. So our customers don't necessarily live in the community, but they're all coming here with their aircraft. Those people are starting to ask about, can we get a spot? Can we get a reservation? This is 2025, and they're already asking to put a reservation. God willing, I'll still be alive and doing well with the airport, and I'll be there. So I think that business is returning, and I would venture to say that since I worked I think one of you mentioned, Richard, you mentioned you worked the open. I did too. It was called the Trash and Portalet Crew, and we had a special sign that we got, and we got a special name. Ecology. We were the ecology masters. So I have this, and I remember this fondly for that event. Not so much for the business, but being part of that and being able to showcase our community. I think that was huge. So I leave you with this. I think that the positive impacts that you made with the decision to do that, what the community is being able to do to support Prairie Dunes and what Prairie Dunes is doing for the airport is huge. And I think we're going to have those 5 people that were there that went out and told their 5 people that now went out and told 20 more. I think the attendance for 29, because I really feel like the first time around it was like Seniors Open, Hutchinson, Kansas, where? And I think we have other things to offer now, the strata and the Cosmosphere, the things that all that you wanted us to do and keep them here. That's what we try to do as a provider of those arriving customers that really don't have any knowledge of our community. So I thank you for that. I thank you for the decisions that were made. I know you struggle with it. I know it's a difficult decision to make. Airport operations doing well. I would invite you. We have a fly-in event that the airport board's put together for May 3rd. We're going to have a lot of airplanes on display, a lot of activities during the day. I would encourage you and the community to come out, share your airport. You can find the information on it at flyhutchkansas.com. And those opportunities to sponsorship for those displays, and I'm sure that the airport board would be happy to help any business that might be interested in it. So I think that's my 5 minutes. I'll take my ecology sign.
As long as you're speaking highly of us, you got a few more. No, I appreciate you coming and putting things into perspective from your point of view and your business's point of view. Those kinds of things help us to make those decisions, and appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, so.
Any further public comments? We need to determine additions or revisions to the agenda. Is there anything anybody has that they want to bring up? So I think we'll move on to our consent agenda. Anybody have anything to say about anything on the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I think pretty well explained in our agenda, so I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented by staff.
I second that.
There's been a motion and a second. At this point, is there any discussion? Seeing none, Cindy, would you help us out?
Commissioner Vincent? Yes, you are. Commissioner Winger?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes. And motion passes 4-0. Or 4 with one abstaining. Or Not present. That brings us to the business items on our agenda. 7A would be a Public Works Annual Report.
Good morning, Don Britton, Director of Public Works. I do this every year, and I say this every year. I don't sit up here and read it word for word. You have it in front of you, and I'm more than willing to answer any questions you have. I do have one addition to this annual report, and that's on the Yoder Water District. And so I'll read what I had on this Yoder Water District and then add what I need to add to it. The Yoder Water District 101 is out of compliance with KDHE regarding nitrate levels within the water. The city of Hutchinson has agreed to sell district water, and we have signed an agreement for the purchase price of the water with the city of Hutchinson. The cost of the project is estimated at $1,116,060 for construction and $283,500 for engineering, making the total cost of this project to provide water for Yoder at $1,399,560. Reno County was awarded a state small town water sewer infrastructure grant for $600,000 and was also awarded a technical assistant grant for $94,600 for the engineering, totaling $694,600. This would leave a remaining balance of $704,960 for this project that's still not covered. The state, through a KDHE, has awarded us an additional grant for $704,660. So now we have been awarded the total amount of the project for the water district of Yoder to make all the repairs and provide water, and also for all the sewer infrastructure for Habit and Yoder. So now, as of all these grants totaled, we're 100% covered. I just want to let you know that. I can't begin to tell you how fortunate we and you are. You're the governing body over all this, and the people at Yoder to not have to, we may have to raise the rates in order to build reserves and stuff, but for them not to have to come up with the money and pay this back with interest, it was a scary thought how we was going to do this. And now we don't have to worry about it, and neither do they. This is huge, and I'm very grateful for the state doing this for those people and us. So if you have any other questions about my annual report, I'm happy to answer them.
I do have a comment. Thank you for hustling like heck on this, because getting that funded without just being crazy prices for the people. I know you spent a lot of time and effort to get this where it's at. I want to say publicly, I appreciate that. I'm sure the people of the community do. Thank you, Don.
Thank you. It wasn't me, it was all staff and everybody. It's, yeah.
Well, then convey that to your staff.
I will. When this has been a problem for years, and some of us had more hair and it was darker when this started. So I'm certainly very happy about this, and I hope they are down there too, and I can't wait to get it done. Any questions about my annual report?
Pretty self-explanatory, Don.
Thank you, gentlemen.
With that, next item on our business agenda is 7B, resolution terminating the moratorium on the zone portion of Reno County and continuing the temporary moratorium within the remainder of Reno County, Kansas. Don't have the exact number there. We'll fill that in. What'd you? 10?
Yep.
So, any comments?
I don't know if there's any, yeah, commissioners, this is just exactly what you read. Last week, you guys finish the regs for the zone portion. As you know, there's a portion of Reno that doesn't have zoning. The current moratorium expires for the whole county on May 1st, so as drafted, it would just extend the moratorium in that portion for a little while longer. And I think the reason would, after talking to Public Works, the theory being, it's final time for you guys to decide if you want to try and extend any solar regulations to that portion of the county or not. This is kind of the decision-making time on that issue. Is that fair, Don? Yeah. So,
Any questions, discussion?
This is on the, to regulations in the unzoned area?
so it removes the moratorium on the zoned, which is, that clearly is time to do that. It also just says, we are holding it, as written, it holds the moratorium until May 1st, because if you guys want to extend the regulations, what you'd have to do is direct the Plan Commission to hold their public hearing on that issue. Then they would go through that process and send a recommendation up to you guys, which would take a few weeks. But they can't start that. The process starts with you directing them to do that. So you kind of have between now and May 1st to decide if you're going to ask them to do that.
And
To extend them, yeah.
And it would give the public a chance to talk to us or call us or whatever.
Yeah, you can.
Make their wishes known.
If you adopt, so assuming you adopt this today, if nothing happens between now and May 1st, then the portion that doesn't have zoning will have no regs on solar, and solar can happen there. Otherwise, between you have some meetings in April to make a decision and send that and tell Planning Commission to get moving on it.
So, does everybody understand Patrick's explanation?
I mean, to have zoning in the, we're talking the western part of the county, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, more or less the western part of county that isn't there. It currently has a wind regulation and nothing else on it, so the question, so.
And that's kind of what's been conveyed to us is what they want down there. They haven't asked for regulations or zoning or.
That is the question for you guys to kind of decide.
Well, it all depends on how you interpreted the meetings we had.
We held 3 meetings out in the unzoned area. May not be familiar with that. We discussed zoning and what they wanted. And they made it pretty plain to us that they don't want zoning regulations that is in effect for the zoned area of Reno County. There has been, I've had some phone calls regarding the wishes on industrial style solar, and they want, the people I have talked to that have talked to me have desired to have when the same regulations in the unzoned area that we just passed for the zoned area. Now, there's been a lot of conversation with regards to zoning and not zoning, just for particular things. And just the comments that I have received is it's not like a 5-acre project or a 1-acre project or something like a junkyard or something like that. And so that's just from what I'm hearing so far. And I think that's one of those situations to where we really need to investigate this a little further with regard to what the overall population really desires. But so far, that's where I come from. And I know that well, quite frankly, nobody wanted to listen to the advantages of being zoned. It was all the negatives that came about from being zoned. I think that's probably a fair statement. Yeah. And so from that standpoint, that's why this extra month would give an opportunity to, for people to have a say and to let us know what they
Right.
want or don't want.
So we're voting to give this extra month?
So if you adopt this resolution 10 today, then that keeps everything in, then you have, and which is what we recommend. And then in April, one or both of your April meetings, you'll have to decide if you're what you're gonna do on the next thing. So I just wanted to bring that up while we were talking about this, but I think this one's not, this is just kind of setting the table for the next discussion, and Commissioner Parks can be here too for that. I'm sure he'll have an opinion, so
Yeah,
that'd be the
I know very little about it, to be honest with you, so, well, I'm hesitant to say, but yeah, I believe we know, they need more input from them people out there, what they actually
And
want
that's what it gives us.
Yeah.
It gives them a time frame
to do that.
And it was pretty plain with regarding wind that they didn't want.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
No, they didn't want, they wanted an opportunity to have a say, is what I said. It wasn't necessarily against
When?
wind, but they wanted to have that opportunity to have a say, which by having the regulations on wind energy, commercial.
Well, and just to be clear, like, what would happen is, if you guys decided to want to extend it, you would first you'd make a motion saying planning commission have your public hearing. And so there would be a public hearing at the planning commission level, and then they'd come back to you just the same way. I mean, there's a whole process again, so it's not gonna be a situation where you come to a commission meeting and just do it. That's not how it would work.
Sorry about that. I knew the process, I just didn't say it right.
I know, I'm more, as we reminded, people watch these videos, and so I don't want the people at home to
Thank
think
you.
it'll happen too quickly.
Yeah. I don't get confused anymore either, so.
Okay, guys, so is everybody clear?
Yeah,
Are we
sure.
ready for a motion or do we?
I would move to adopt the proposed resolution as presented by the staff regarding terminating the moratorium on the zone portion of Reno County and continuing the temporary moratorium within the remainder of Reno County, Kansas.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I was at one of those meetings and those people were, they definitely didn't want anybody in there to tell them what to do. So, and I think you're right. They were focusing on all the negatives and none of the positives. And sometimes a wise person told me sometimes you get what you wish for and it's not necessarily what you need. So, but yeah, I think if we do this, carry it over just a little bit, it'll help us get a chance to get some more input.
And that, I should have added proposed resolution of 2025-10 to make the motion complete, okay? I knew you would put it in, but.
You're okay with your second as stated? Ron, you're okay with the second? Okay. So, no further discussion. Cindy, thank you.
Commissioner Benson?
Yes.
Commissioner Winger?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes. Our next item on our agenda is 7C, the delegation of a fence viewing board, and to set a date and time for a fence viewing as requested by Norman Roth and Cynthia Roth. Patrick, or which
Don-
one of you guys is gonna lead us through this?
Well, we'll probably both be involved. I mean, we get these requests from time to time under the great Kansas state statute that requires the commissioners to serve as the fence viewers. Typically, we don't have all the commissioners go out. What typically we do is we ask one of the commissioners to kind of be the head fence viewer, and they usually assign Don Britton and Mark Van Ochen, I think, to be the other two. And then what's that? You and me? Okay. Don and I will go out as the other two fence viewers with whichever commissioner. And what we really need to do is I notice up both landowners on both sides of the boundary to let them know when that happens so they have the opportunity to kind of come. So we just need to figure out which one of you is going to go with Don and me and look at this boundary line and then kind of set a date when the weather's going to be as nice as it is today to go out and do it.
Do we know what I guess it doesn't make any difference as to what the discussion is. We just do our viewing and make our decision.
Yeah, I believe, going from memory, this is a situation where it hasn't been, livestock haven't been on both sides, but one of the owners now wants to enclose it for livestock, is going off my memory, which is usually what happens. It's usually either a case where the existing fence is not adequate in the opinion of one of the neighbors, or the land hasn't been pastured and one of the owners wants to erect a fence for pasture. These are very old. This is a kind of part of our homestead ag heritage as Kansas, that we have these laws about fencing, and every once or twice a year the commissioners get asked to do this.
So if you want to keep livestock in, you got to get a deal to build a fence?
Yeah, you have to build a fence, and so the apportionment of the cost between the neighbors is the issue. So
Okay.
yeah, so
One neighbor will say,
He don't
I'm not
pay
gonna
for it."
run
Yeah.
livestock,
So
I'm not
paying.
gonna pay my half, or whatever the situation might be.
So
The
this
fence view.
decides if they split the cost, or?
Yeah,
Or one of them absorbs it, or whatever?
and
There-
usually they split the cost. It's pretty clear, and then we kind of look at the property line and just define the halfway point and say who gets to pay half.
And the type of fence that will be built.
And it has to be a Kansas legal fence, which is at least 3 wire. Don and I.
With a caveat,
Mm-hmm.
it also must be, what's the wording in the court cases, adequate.
Yeah, as you say, it has
To do the job for the animal that's gonna be again it. So, yes, if there's no animals, no nothing, that's the minimum fence you can build. But court law has determined that it will be an adequate fence to do the job.
Yeah.
So there's some caveats there.
Yeah, it's either, I guess, depending on your perspective, I find it kind of interesting, but it doesn't take it takes, most of the time is driving out there and taking the time to look at the situation and like Commissioner Bogner's saying, consider all the factors and then making a decision
And where's this at?
that I don't remember. Did we look it up, Jubilee? I'm looking at Jubilee because she takes care of me.
It's like almost all of the county and just west of here.
Okay. We should have looked up which district it's in. Is it Hearst? Thanks, Randy.
I think I can fill just a little bit more in before you get out there. One owner has some land that's coming out of CRP, and the neighbor next door is strictly cropland. And so that's what brought this on.
Well, I'd offer just for the education, I guess. Because I don't know what I'm talking about, so, or what we're doing here, but yeah.
So,
And I think Patrick can provide the copy of the fence laws.
Yeah.
uh,
It was on here.
so,
Packet.
so who are we appointing, or who's volunteering?
All volunteer, for one.
You want that, it's in your district?
It's in my district, so.
You can both go and you two and Don can do it. I mean, it's not bad if Commissioner Vincent wants to word it. It does count, it keeps happening. It's not the last time.
Yeah.
I think we've had one in your district, we did have one in your district a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, since it's in my district,
Yeah.
if someone else wants to go, that's great.
Yeah. I'd just like to go to see what.
Well, do we need to have a motion to appoint them?
I would recommend maybe a motion to appoint Commissioner Hurst, Don and myself, and then Mr. Vincent can come watch.
Or
Sure, that's fine with me.
however you want to be listed?
No, that's fine.
It then comes back for a vote for everybody, so.
Yes, yes. So with that, do we have a motion?
I'll motion it.
So that's Ron, Don,
And
Patrick.
Patrick,
Yeah.
I'm just visiting, right?
I think so, that way if your
Yeah.
schedule doesn't allow it, you
Yeah.
can have.
All right, good enough.
We'd love to have you out there.
Oh,
Good experience.
it is. The last time I was appointed, we ended up going to a seminar on that by the quote-unquote fence guru of all the United States on ag law. And we didn't have to go because the guy was in attendance, and he said, it's obvious what the law says. There's no reason for you to have to show up. So, I mean, that corrected itself. But anyway, if there wasn't a second, I'll second. Where were we
I
at?
had a motion.
I'll second. Cindy, help us out.
Yes.
Commissioner Vincent, Commissioner Winger,
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner.
Yes. For those of you that just got appointed, or for, like, if you want to do a little reading, that seminar, he spoke for about an hour, a little bit, is all on tape. And I happened to be down in the office a week ago on some other conservation office, on some other business, and I'll give Patrick, before I leave here, the YouTube address where you can watch that seminar that clears up a whole lot on fence law, because what it says in your Reno County Commissioner Manual is pretty vague.
So I don't have the YouTube. I'd like the YouTube video. We keep the handout he gave, and when I give people when I mail out the notice of the dates, I just include it so the landowners have an idea of what's going on.
I'll give you that. If I may need to talk to Andrew to get it out of my phone, but I've got it. All right, guys. Next item. 7D. Brush up
Oh,
Reno.
Sorry, could we set a date when we're doing this? Sorry to.
Yes.
I don't know if Wednesdays or Thursdays work for the people going. If he has I was looking at maybe the 23rd or the 16th of April, or it could be, or also the 16th of April.
Is that a Thursday?
Thursday's the 17th.
Okay, 16th is the Wednesday?
Yeah,
Morning, afternoon,
whichever.
mid-morning would be best for myself.
We
Morning.
morning.
What about morning?
What?
What
He
about
said he
morning?
was okay.
Morning, yeah. But
That's best for
mid-morning
him.
would be best.
Wednesday or Thursday?
What's that?
Wednesday or Thursday, does it matter?
Wednesday.
Okay. Would the 16th at 10 a.m. work for you, Commissioner Hurst? Okay.
What's that do to your schedule, Don?
Does that work for you? Okay. Good. All right, I will.
Yeah, that's right. 6, yeah.
All right, I will send out the notice to the landowners that we're gonna do a fence viewing Wednesday, April 16th at 10 a.m. And we'll probably just meet at the courthouse and then go out there, Commissioner Vincent. Just meet here and go out there, so like 9:30 here, and we'll get out there. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, now we're ready for 7D. And that's brush up Reno County agreement with Interfaith Housing and Community. You're under the gun, buddy.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Clint Nelson, CEO of Interfaith Housing here in Hutchinson. Here this morning requesting approval of a agreement between Interfaith and Reno County to continue to perform a Brush Up Reno program that has been in operation for the last 2 years or 2 seasons, as we would say, painting season being basically March through October. Is typically how we define that. Before I get into the specifics of this agreement, I would like to set it up. I know we've got a couple new commissioners. I would like to set it up with a little bit of information about our ARPA performance over the last couple years. The ARPA program included a Brush Up Reno component. And so I wanted to give you a little bit more information there, but throughout 2022, we worked on a few variations of a subrecipient agreement to administer the ARPA housing funds that the county had seeked out to utilize. We did enter into a final agreement in February of 2023, so we're just a little over 2 years in performing that ARPA-funded work. I will say the volume of applicants and participation, particularly here in Hutchinson, was at a much faster pace than we had, predicted. And to give you a couple current stats, we're into, I believe, our 90, somewhere around 90 reimbursements. So we pay out all the expenditures on this program and then work with Leslie and the county, as well as iParametric, to submit reimbursement requests. And we're into the 90s, almost 100 reimbursements. Project-wise, our unit goals within the ARPA program were 340 total projects. That's a blend of larger $15,000, $20,000 home improvements for homeowners throughout the county, as well as what we labeled as micro projects. Unit goal 340. As of last week's reimbursement sheet, we're at 260 completed projects plus another 16 of SCED. We partner with SCED on a number of projects. 16 SCED projects that are fixing to close out in the next week. So 276 of our 340 unit goal in 2 years. We had 4 years to spend this fund down. It's almost gone. So there's a healthy appetite throughout the county by your residents for housing resources. So I just want us to keep that at the forefront. As far as the brush up Reno, the specific request today, the city of Hutchinson has had a brush up house painting program for about a decade now. And we have worked in partnership with them to help oversee the operations and marketing of that program. With the opportunity to utilize ARPA funds, we actually reworked the specific details of the program. So I would say for years there was very little use in Hutchinson of the program. The award or the source of funding was limited to $500. The homeowner had to front the money, turn in their receipts to the city, and then wait for a reimbursement. And so that was a barrier for participation. There really wasn't anybody using the program as it existed back then. Our remake of the program, we upped that amount to a max of $1,500. That's for paint, supplies. They could even purchase a $300 airless paint sprayer to accomplish their house painting job. We partner with Sherwin-Williams as our preferred vendor. We created a voucher option or voucher scenario where once we verified ownership, we required them to be current on their property taxes. You've got a number of residents that were delinquent on their taxes. And this $1,500 award for paint actually encouraged them to go catch their taxes up, because they weren't going to get issued a voucher or participate in the program without those taxes current. So that's been another byproduct of this program. So $1,500 max, no reimbursement. Once we qualify them that they're the owner of record and they're current on their taxes, we emboss a voucher. We connect them with one of Sherwin-Williams employees, and then they help them determine the volume of paint and the supplies they need. And then we do before and after pictures. We've got a couple different letters that we follow up with if we need to kind of nudge them along a little bit. We don't want anybody getting their free paint and then leaving it in the garage to freeze over the winter. So we followed through to make sure these participants actually completed their project. In the brush up, so Hutchinson, again, has had the program for years. Reno County, rural Reno has never had a program until 2 years ago when ARPA was available. Wasn't sure how, the appetite for that in the rural communities. It was exceptional. We've had 73 completed house painting projects in your smaller rural communities throughout the county in the last 2 years. So upwards of 35 to 40 per year. Those are spread. There are communities that have had a number of participants in the program. Bueller is a prime example. Just a lot of residents, neighbors that caught wind of it and actually helped each other prep and paint. So there's a community pride aspect. It's in my opinion a very modest investment by the local government to offer your residents an opportunity to improve the curb appeal and in the sustainability and value of their property. So as ARPA is winding down, we had a $4 million allocation of funds with our 340 unit goal. And currently we're at 3.8, just over 3.8 million of funding that has either been expensed or is allocated to open contracts to projects that have already been bid out. We expect those funds will be fully expensed, and we'll start closing out the program and reporting our closeout to the county mid-2025. And for that fact, I'm in front of you today to speak about the Brush Up Reno program, the impact it's had, especially the per dollar impact to invest $1,500 to a resident, to a homeowner, and them taking the initiative to prep that house, to go pick out their supplies, to paint the house on their own or with, friends, and then in that positive peer pressure it has on that block. I mean, it really has just a tremendous effect on neighborhood and community stabilization. So this is a program for the county that I would really like to see the momentum continue. Without ARPA funds, that's going to require an annual allocation of funds to continue to operate this program. And so there we have our request today for a partnership or operating agreement, and we're requesting the same amount that we're requesting from the city of Hutchinson for the Hutchinson piece of the program. This season, we're requesting $45,000 for 30 projects. Those would be made available to rural communities, rural residents only. We would use our same marketing materials that we've created. A lot of those are door hangers. We also try to get out and attend civic and community meetings and make sure that all the communities are aware that this program exists. We've got a line for marketing and contingency, and then we've got our 15% indirect or operating expenditures for a total request of $57,500. And that would be for this 2025 season of Brush Up Reno. And that's your overview. I would stand for questions about either this program or anything related to the larger ARPA program.
So, any questions, guys?
Yeah, does this pertain to, is this, you have to be an owner, or is it investment properties, or who can qualify for this?
So we, being locally funded, we have some latitude here. We, if communities feel like they really need to make this available to their landlords and their renters, we could certainly consider that. We've prioritized homeowners for all of our ARPA work. But, with approval from the actual property owner, I think the tenant could apply and qualify. But we're, for this amount, this is a very modest request to continue to keep the program live and have some funding to make available to the rural communities. I would recommend at this funding level, we keep it for homeowners at this time.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, Clint, I think this is an absolutely fantastic program. I've seen the results all over the county. My problem goes back to everyone that we provided ARPA funds to knew that this was a one-time funding. And if every one of the ARPA programs that we helped fund was to come back in and ask for more money, that's my problem.
Yeah.
I see the end result, okay, but where does it start? Where does it stop? I know there's people out there that can certainly use this program, and I think it's a great, it's shown it work. marketing contingency and the indirect operational cost, the actual 45,000, I think is well worth it. But my problem is if every organization that was, let's keep, for instance, Pretty Prairie, we gave some funds to their EMS facility, and they're having trouble making all of that work. Childcare, they're already thinking about asking for county funds. Where does it stop? It's not because I don't think it's an absolute fantastic program, and I think it helps a lot of people, and it helps our whole county as a whole. But I guess that's where I'm struggling, okay?
If I could respond to that, I appreciate the comments, and you're right. I think every investment to an individual organization or an individual concept opens up the door for other like requests. I would certainly, as part of your decision-making process, I would certainly look at, proof of concept and prior performance. So this fact that this is a program that's yielded results, I would think that's something that hopefully the local government would want to continue with. Beyond these smaller requests, I can tell you on behalf of Interfaith, the ARPA program and continuing to have some sort of carrot for these rural communities. Brush Up would be a resource, an offering, a reason for us to be out there in their community, right? I think that will continue to grow our relationships. I've had individual meetings recently with Bueller and with leaders from Sylvia and in Arlington. So, this is exactly what we set out to do. We knew ARPA funds were going to dwindle down at some point. It was our onboarding to start forming that relationship and helping these rural communities. It doesn't stop with ARPA. So individual requests, yes, I'm certain I will be back in front of you commissioners with another proposal, but I would give some consideration to programs that have existed and that are yielding results. Within your limits, try to continue to invest some funding in those programs so that they don't completely expire. I would hate for us not to have some of these resources available to our residents in the next few years.
You mentioned earlier 4.1 million. I understand that, and you said 3.8. Now, is the other 300,000 spoken for?
Yeah. So we have a waiting list that of projects that we haven't actually put out for bid tours yet, but right now we're looking at, with our partnerships in place, because we had some great partnerships with the ARPA program, we're looking at reconciling all of our projects and numbers and making sure we know exactly where we stand financially right now before we sign more contracts on projects. So that's really where we're at, is contractors being 6-8 months behind scheduling out that far in advance. I mean, we're waiting for the jobs to be finished, final invoicing. We'll see exactly what our residual funds are. But yeah, we're basically there. We know 3.81 of the 4 million is accounted for, and so there's a little bit left. I foresee that going into roofs and accessibility upgrades and some of those larger projects.
So basically, you could use 55,000 of that in this too, designated to Brush Up Reno County.
We are not planning to open that back up and make awards this year for Hutch or Brush Up Hutch or Brush Up Reno, because we don't believe the funding is there for that. I know it's a great question.
I'm trying to pick your
on
part,
paper,
okay.
It looks like there's 180,000 left, but that's really all been directed towards projects, and some of those being rural projects that we've got in the queue. We just haven't plugged those numbers in yet.
I know you can't do that till
we've got a really good CFO.
You gotta have a little hedge fund there.
Yeah, if we had the money to fund this season, this painting season with ARPA, I wouldn't be here asking for anything today. this is the way we continue to make that program available.
Clint,
Yes, sir.
my question would be, and I think you alluded to it, are we, with your program, you're raising the value of these properties? Would you say that?
Sir, you know, that's data that we don't necessarily have access to unless we intentionally track that a few years down the road. If, you know, these brush up projects are not going to be permit projects, but certainly anything that we pulled permit on, the county appraiser has that data, and I'm assuming it changes the assessed value. From a market standpoint, I absolutely believe some of these homes and their improvements, their resale value is going to increase in the future. I also, my hope, and this isn't throwing stones because I'm a private landlord myself, my hope is that more of our existing housing stock continues to pass from homeowner to homeowner, and we have less falling into you know, investment and rental side of things. I know that number is starting to move the wrong direction, but yes, stabilizing these houses, the aesthetics of these houses continue to keep their value up. I think that has some far-reaching effects for our housing stock.
Well, here's what strikes me. What was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago? We passed where we don't start collecting the taxes on the improvements. It's incremental. Any homeowner in county, and if I'm wrong, guys, say something. So we spend a whole lot of money doing just what you're talking about. And now we're being asked to do it again. We created a new program that's putting money there for people to use. Every homeowner in the county has the same opportunity to use that. We took a large step there. And then I'm thinking, like Ron, that you knew this was going to run out. We've turned around and we put a different style place for them to get the money to do these things. It's hard for me to want to double up because they could theoretically collect from you and go over here and collect on the program we just started. Kind of hard for me on a project we knew was going to sunset to make it possible to double up. And maybe I'm way off base, and when we take a vote later on in a few minutes, we'll probably find out. You have any?
May I react to that?
Real quick, let me.
I was going to clarify on NRP, but go ahead.
Okay, that's what I was gonna do.
Go ahead.
Commissioner, for the NRP, they pay the taxes, but they have to invest, what, $15,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 of their own money for improvements that increases the assessed valuation. The brush up Reno County, I'm not sure will actually increase the valuation, and this is money that they don't already have to help with the painting. The NRP, they pay the property tax and get a rebate for the incremental cost, but.
No, I agree with that, and Patrick did an exceptional job hosting the meeting in South Hutch last week, and of what I know about NRP, yes, you will have some renovation permits that apply for the NRP, but I think by and large it's going to be your new construction that really benefits from the NRP. That's what I've seen historically. So I'm pleased that the county is passing NRP and we're looking at that. I think it's going to absolutely play into new development, but I didn't really relate that to some of these annual programs. And just to reiterate, I know you guys all heard it, but this program did not exist in Reno up until 2 years ago. So it was nothing available. It was not a resource to your rural residents. Hutchinson had it for about 10 years, and I believe their intention is to continue to fund it. It's such a
And who does the physical work?
So the homeowner does. That's the sweat equity piece. For on average, a $1,500 award per project, it's the owner's responsibility to facilitate the work, whether they do that themselves or they have friends do it or they hire a painter to come on and put the paint on. But they've got the paint and supplies. Most of them do their own house painting project, and then we confirm the results with before and after pictures. In the indirect cost, as we've requested, handles a lot of our follow-up work. Sometimes they don't get the award and get the paint, and a month later you drive to check and they've prepped it, but they haven't started painting. So on our application, we do ask residents if they feel like they're not physically capable of painting their own property. In those scenarios, we will try to connect them with volunteer groups. And so we'll offer that additional volunteer resource. But yeah, it's really, property by property, and but not having this available, I think you've got 30 houses this year that aren't getting painted.
And where do you come up with, you got the funding, they're gonna do it. How do you determine who gets those funds? Is there an economic threshold? How are you determining that?
Within this program, we did not set the brush up piece specifically, we did not set an income limit. We tracked that because we asked them for their household income on the application. And the participation has been, it is homeowners, so it's mainly middle class. We didn't have anything that was awarded to a homeowner that we would deem to be maybe over income or not necessarily having the need. It's if there's a household that makes $200,000 that applies for it, and their house is really in desperate need of a painting, and maybe even at that income level, they're paycheck to paycheck. That exists out there. We would allow them to participate. It's a win for the community getting that house looking better. None of these communities want blight as people drive around their neighborhoods. So that's a win for the community.
Where, that $4+ million you got from ARPA, that was a year ago or 2 years ago?
So we entered into that agreement in February of 23. So it's a little over 2 years ago.
No money left over on that, we say. Well, where'd it all go, I guess?
Yeah, so I've got a specific breakdown, and I can provide you guys with an updated, it's all itemized in our reimbursement requests. I know Leslie and the county and your staff have access to that, but we've got it itemized by specific action lines, those being major renovations, micro projects, collaborative work, which would be our partnership with SCED on a number of projects. And we've also got it split out between Hutchinson and in the top 7 rural communities in the county by population. So they all had their own kind of goal as far as dollar amounts. And we've got all that information available. I could get that to you, Commissioner Vincent. Or I could tell it to you. The rural community, the largest participation was in Hutchinson, just due to the population and the number of housing units. Rural participation, Bueller, Haven, and Pretty Prairie, they maxed out, went a little above what we had itemized or allocated to those communities. So there was a lot of response in those towns, those communities. But yeah, there's just under 1.1 million of that fund ended up in rural projects.
Of the ARPA money?
Of the ARPA money. Yeah, you got a much larger amount that ended up in our Hutchinson projects. And then we did have, late last year, I did request a revision to our scope of work to include the demolition of the former St. Elizabeth Hospital. So that was also used within this ARPA budget.
I would like to see some income limits put on this. If I'm making $200,000, like you said, and I'm living to paycheck, that's not my responsibility. That's that person to look after their own budget. And I think that there's, this would be more favorable to me if we could have some income limitations on this so that those elderly that are retired and those single parent families that are struggling, and I think I would be more inclined if so I would like to consider, see what the commission would think about tabling this until Commissioner Parks could come back and be part of the conversation too. We could have more discussion.
And would you like to see a revised agreement with some income qualifiers? Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
would too. I'd like to see some qualifications, because I'm like Ron here. If I made $200,000 and I let my house look like, a poor person's, then I'm not budgeting my money, I don't think, correctly for my improvements.
Yeah.
And I did do NRP when my wife and I got married 27 years ago. We paid for our improvements and then got some money back from the county in taxes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't we couldn't double dip or anything.
Yeah.
But I do know a number of single mothers who own a house that could use a little touch up. I also know United Way, because the facilities department and other departments in Reno County volunteer for United Way, and they go out and paint houses. At least in the city, the one we did a couple years ago.
Yeah.
They did that and stuff. So,
And like-
but yeah, I'd like to see a qualifier too on income and stuff like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just as an educational piece, the United Way house painting is in partnership with Interfaith. So that annual volunteer day where we're painting 5 or 6 houses, some of those houses, that's how the paint was paid. The product was paid for was through the brush up program. But yes, you're right. There's usually a number of houses being painted in August for the volunteer day. We're very involved in that.
I also think that you've got both marketing and contingency. I think it's awful high, and maybe that's all in the indirect operational costs. So I think some of those need to be looked at and see because I think maybe that if the commission would decide this, I think commissioners themselves could go out and help promote this project as we meet with city councils and people and do a little social media marketing.
Yeah,
It doesn't cost that much money.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough for me as a nonprofit to continue to offer our services and resources for nothing, for free.
I understand.
I don't think 7,500 in indirect is a big ask. I don't. Contingency could also include, there's damaged siding that we need to repair. There's big tree limbs sitting on the house that we need to cut back. There can be items that need to be performed before that house can be painted, and we try to assist with that as well. But I respect what you're saying, but continuing to tell the nonprofit that they're asking for too much in indirect is not a sustainable model for your nonprofit agencies.
We get a lot of phone calls for putting money into what a lot of people think government ought to have their nose out of. Now, whether we're in agreement with them or not, that's beside the point, but we catch a lot of negative on the other side for spending monies on non-government type deals. So that's why I'm a little careful about what I want to do here, but I take it as are we to a point where we want to wait for a full board and we want to get a little more information from you, table it till the next time around and go forward?
I'm kind of with that, for now, full board, and, this economic development has just, seemed to be going from everything from daycare, golf tournaments, I mean, it's everywhere. We need to kind of figure out where to concentrate our economic development money at, where to do the most good. And we've had studies for that. So
We're in the,
we're at
we've
the
got
point
old studies.
Yeah.
We're in the process of having a new study done to redirect that. And, so, yeah, it might be a good idea to hold off a little bit until some of that happens.
because we're spending money for economic development and we're not seeming to get anywhere fast.
Well, I would move to table this, point till next meeting and maybe instruct, Clint, like the program, but to, instruct the, to come back with some, income guidelines as well as relook at some of the other costs besides just the 45,000. Okay? That makes sense?
You want to second that, Ron?
Yeah, I'll second
I just said that because the way you were just talking. All right, we got a motion and a second. I think we pretty well talked it to death unless somebody's got something to say.
I think it is a great program, don't get me wrong. And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't want to see blighted houses anywhere, but I do like the idea of having a guideline on income.
All right, with that, Cindy, you want to?
Commissioner Vincent?
Yes.
Commissioner Winger?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clint. All right. 7E, our next, I take it that we have somebody in the audience here that wants to speak on the Kansas Natural Resource Coalition presentation. If you would, we know where you're from, but if you would give your names, please, we'd appreciate it for the record.
I'm kind of testing this. Is that good? Can everybody hear me? I'm half deaf, so I can't tell if anybody can hear or not. So my name is Bob Ryan. I'm a county commissioner in Pawnee County, Kansas. I'm also the current president of the Kansas Natural Resource Coalition. I want to thank the board and those involved for your time this morning and giving us the opportunity to speak. This is Tracy Barton, our executive director.
Good morning. I just wanted to say thank you. We've worked a little bit with your county on adopting some water policy for the Quivira National Wildlife Refuge. So what we'd like to do this morning is approach you for membership in Kansas Natural Resource Coalition, and then we'd also like to give you some updates on what's happening with Quivira as well. So a little bit about our organization. We are a coalition of counties led by commissioners, and we monitor and, when appropriate, intervene on behalf of the member counties to reduce the impact of the federal government and their citizens in the area of human environment, natural resources, and land use. As you know, we're in the middle of a changing administration, and during the previous administration, President Biden issued an order, 14008, that put into effect that they were going to conserve or control 30% of the U.S. lands and waters by the year 2030. And while we've had a change in administration, the agencies at the federal government have continued with that focus. For example, we just recently, within the last month, submitted comments on a monarch butterfly listing as endangered in the entire United States. And we currently have a lawsuit against Fish and Wildlife Service over a lesser prairie chicken listing. I don't know if you followed the lesser prairie chicken at all, but in the state of Kansas, it's listed as threatened. Threatened, if you know anything about the Endangered Species Act, is supposed to be a flagging mechanism for animals, plants, organisms that are truly endangered. But they listed the lesser prairie chicken as threatened with a 4D rule, which imposed property rights restrictions on landowners as well as counties. So if you live in in a county where this habitat is located, counties are restricted from spraying noxious weeds. They're restricted from grading their roads, putting up fences, putting up EMS towers. Private landowners are restricted from putting up buildings, putting up fences. If they have cattle in the in the habitat area, they're required to complete a grazing plan that has, at their expense, and that's been approved with approved provider of Fish and Wildlife Service. And additionally, if they have non-tillable acres, they're restricted from converting them back into tillable acres. So we're seeing, and that's one example of federal overreach. Another one is the EPA Clean Water Act is another issue that we engaged on last year concerning small meat processors. Are any of you familiar with those? So the small meat processors, there was a proposed rule that came out that said, we're going to upgrade, we're requiring you as a meat processor to upgrade your equipment to the tune of $700,000 to $800,000. And then annually, the maintenance cost is going to be about $100,000. And if you know anything about small meat processors, that far exceeds their annual income, which would put most of them out of business. So if you think about the trickle-down effect of that, right? You've got land or cattle producers who are taking their cattle to small meat processors, eliminating the small meat processors from our economy is going to have an impact on our food supply as a nation, as well as Kansas. I mean, Kansas is the third largest state producer of cattle in the nation. So what we're doing is we're monitoring the Federal Register on a daily basis. So when the agencies come out with a proposed rule change, it hits the Federal Register, and then we flag it. And then as an organization, we currently represent a third of the state in counties. We have 33 members. And we flag it, and we pull together policy analysts that write policy, they write substantive comments to educate the public record. As we did that for the Lesser Prairie Chicken, the substantive comments is what gave us the foothold for the lawsuit that we currently have going. And the lawsuit is being handled by Pacific Legal Foundation, which is, they focus on private property rights, and they're doing that work without any charge to KNRC. In terms of Quivira, and I'm sure you all have followed the call for water, and where we're currently at with that is the call for water has been pushed back to 2026. And what we've done as an organization, we've developed policy for counties surrounding Quivira that are impacted by this call for water. And if you follow the history, you know that Kansas Audubon sued U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for water because they didn't feel like the refuge had enough water for the wildlife. They in turn called for water for 30% reduction of farmers and landowners and cities and counties around Quivira. And that's been pushed back, like I said, until 2026. What we're doing is we're using the policy that we developed to engage in a coordination effort with the federal government. So one of the things that we like to say is, and we like to share, I guess, is with the counties, is that your job as commissioners is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of our citizens. And there's no other group that's given that charge. So we have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Their charge is to protect the wildlife. And so without the balance and without the voice of the counties, we're missing out on a balanced approach, including the human environment, our economies. And so we're using coordination, and the coordination effort and the legal foundation that we have to do coordination, giving commissioners a seat at the table, comes from the National Environmental Policy Act, which is the NEPA. And in that policy, it says that the federal agencies shall coordinate with local government. Unfortunately, they don't do that. There's not been one instance that I'm aware of where they've involved local government. With Quivira specifically, they've pulled in a lot of NGOs to feed information, but never the local government. So the effort that we're engaging in is giving the commissioners a seat at the table to come up with some solutions and to also give them some accountability. There's really no accountability for Fish and Wildlife Service that they are managing the wildlife refuge according to their own plan. And if you look at the national trends for national wildlife refuges, there's a trend of even having acquisition borders. They're after land and water. In September of 2023, the Missouri Headwaters, they expanded it from 53,000 acres to 5.8 million acres using conservation easements to do it. And last April, Muleshoe, Texas, they took a refuge that was 6,440 acres and expanded it to 7 million acres, reaching all the way into New Mexico. And that has an impact on our gas, our oil, our agricultural lands, and our local economies. So what we do, in other words, what we do as an organization, we provide tools and resources to counties, we provide education, land use policy that will help give you a seat at the table in negotiating and monitoring the federal government. Bob, would you like to add anything to that?
Tracy is obviously very well versed on the minutia. We can get into the weeds on a lot of these things. Our steering committee, you know, over the past several years, my involvement, I can get into the weeds on a lot of these things. I do that voluntarily because I believe in it. The bottom line is, as commissioners, we face a lot of things, right? And deal with limited resources. And where I always like to let commissioners know, you know, the value of KNRC is for a very small comparative price. Collectively, we have Tracy, who is tasked with every day monitoring that Federal Register, right? And then the process of how things work and how things move through. If Tracy identifies something or a member county commissioner identifies something that, hey, this is happening in our county, we then take that to the steering committee, which is made up of county commissioners, right, from our member counties. We evaluate that. Should KNRC expend resources to become involved in this, which are county resources, right? Because we are completely county funded. The money that KNRC uses to do these things comes from our member counties. We don't have outside funding. So the steering committee takes that, looks at that, and says, yes, we think KNRC shouldn't get involved, and directs that effort on, okay, we're going to expend this much. We're going to reach out to these analysts. Let's get a cost of what this would take to create something bigger, like the water policy for Quivira or the policy that we implemented against the national interest electric transmission corridor, spit that out, NETSI, you know, last year. And I tell commissioners that, you know, I truly believe that if KNRC didn't exist, in other words, if these counties had not started this entity and kept this entity going over the past, 12 plus years, I don't think we would have been able to act fast enough to push back on that NETSI corridor, which was rescinded. And I can guarantee you that KNRC and our member counties had a lot to do with the fact that that did get rescinded, and they did not get a 5-mile swath of land 780 miles long or whatever, at least the portion through Kansas, right? And that, we can get into the weeds on that too, but they're always, when the federal government does these things, they're always so vague, right? What does that mean? Well, they wouldn't define exactly what that meant until you got to phase 3 or phase 4, right? Oh, we'll probably shrink it. Well, why don't you shrink it now? Does that make sense? The reason we were so opposed to the NETSI was basically 2 points. This nexus of a 5-mile wide swath of land and federal eminent domain, okay? So I firmly believe without KNRC, and we worked with Patrick and Barton County hard on that. I don't think without KNRC and the county efforts that would have been rescinded. I don't. I think the reason it was rescinded and through that one was because of those efforts. Obviously, we had some help from federal legislators and state legislators and all those other things. It was a team effort. But I think us being able to react as fast as we did is what ultimately made that NETSI go away. So I say that 2 reasons. That is the value, right? It's $5,000 a year. We all know budgets are tight. As president and our steering committee, we treat that money as public money, right? County commissioners from the member counties are who decides how that money is spent, okay? And who decides what KNRC engages in. The other thing KNRC will never do is tell you as a county commissioner that you have to do something, right? We are there to advise, right? We are there to bring resources together, bring counties together. decisions that happen in your county are your decision. You're never going to get pressure from me or anyone else, right, that you have to do this. We are simply there to package this up and assist, right? So even being a member of KNRC doesn't mean you have to engage in any action that KNRC is taking. If it's something major, we'll put out a vote of our member counties, right? We are looking at engaging in this. This is a big enough deal. We're going to expend this amount of resources. We'll just put it out, yay or nay, right? And the steering committee made up of county commissioners is who executes that. Those are the points I like to make sure everybody understands, because we're not some ethereal group, right? We are built of Kansas counties and Kansas county commissioners. Sure.
And I just caught that. The fee for joining your organization is $5,000
Annually, yep.
per year.
Yep.
Yes. Well, I've attended several of your meetings and thought for a long time you had a very good organization. I get farm magazines on this thing, and our federal government is completely out of hand in their takings and the way they're treating individuals, in my opinion. So we at least have a voice or somebody to slow them up a little bit, or at least they've got to talk to the local people. $5,000 is darn cheap to give our people in this county a voice. Our public works director is with us, and some of the stuff that got said about what they're doing with what the counties can do with roads and various things like that, that's his department, and that should be, we should be able to do what's best for our citizens. Me personally, and you mentioned when you came up, you're asking for us to join your organization. Very informative, especially if you read all the stuff in the magazines and what they're doing. And I've got friends own property on the Buffalo River and what they've been doing in Arkansas and what they've been doing to expand that park for years, like 20 or 30 years. I think it would be money well spent by this community to have a say. Now, whether I'm correct or not, we'll see later on. But
yeah, and Tracy touched on it too, the new administration. We certainly hope the next 4 years is going to be more favorable than the last 4 years. We also know, if you're looking at what's going on at the federal government right now, the struggle, right, to reset that. And even if it does go well, we don't know what happens 4 years after that. But in the next 4 years, if we do get favorable, that's kind of where our mindset is right now. If we can quit putting fires out every day, and Tracy and myself too, the last 2 years have worked a lot at putting out fires, okay? If we don't have to put out fires, engaging in a positive manner with these agencies, right, and with our legislators and with the federal government as a whole, to kind of change the mindset and change the concept of how these things do get done, that is going, if we don't have to put out fires, that is going to be kind of where our mentality steers to, is hey, this isn't the way it should be, right? What can we do to make this more formal, right? Codify some of these things to where automatically county commissioners, local governments in general get the first seat at the table instead of the last. Does that make sense? So.
How many counties did you say were in it?
We currently have 33 members.
And what's one of the largest ones that are in it with you?
Harvey County just joined this year. We have Barton County. A lot of our counties are more rural. We started over 10 years ago because of the lesser prairie chicken issue, and that was all based in southwest Kansas. So that's kind of where our foundational counties have been. We've had Seward County as a member, which is a larger county as well. Yeah, Ford County Ford County is one of our founding members as well. Sean Tassett is a big advocate of KNRC.
Is this something that administration, Pat, Don, whomever does or watches over for us? I mean, obviously, we all don't. So, I mean, is that so? And second, how does how do you guys feel about it? If it's something that we need, that you can't handle, or that's a big point there.
This is it's a membership, staff to the details, I guess, in the weeds that they're doing. We don't get into that. Most of these federal items, they're right that the federal government's supposed to contact us. They don't. I was in Finney County and we joined for the lesser prairie chickens years ago, and then they dropped. They may have joined again, but
Finney's back and forth, kind of depends on who.
Right, it's about memberships and money, but they do their service is probably something we don't get into the weeds at. It doesn't, because there's items that come up every once in a while. Lesser prairie chickens, the Quivira,
Well, and that corridor.
the corridor, so it's kind of, it's something that we don't really provide unless we need to, depending on the issue. Patrick, since you have.
Barton, I work with them in Barton County, where Barton County is a member. It's one of those things with this membership, we may not have an interaction with the federal government for years here, but when we do, it's very complicated and their help's very useful. Barton's had several run-ins, kind of strangely. One of them was the federal transmission corridor issue, which they helped a lot with, which became close to a crisis in a hurry with the timing of it. And then we're on the edge of just like Reno County, Barton's also on the edge of the Quivira watershed. So I guess the short, they have been helpful. It's possible that we wouldn't need their help for years. And so there might be some years where where you might think as a commissioner, gosh, we shouldn't have paid that fee, but there might be another year where something happens and we work with them very closely, so.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm struggling with is, obviously there could be a need for it when it comes up, but if and when it comes up, are we $5,000 a year for something that don't happen for 10 years?
But on the other hand, if you don't have the mechanism in place, Ron, they'll come in like they did with that electric corridor, 5 miles wide, when they need 50 foot, 100 foot, and they'll control everything in that corridor. Look what that takes out of your county. And what if you don't have a mechanism already in place? How do you bring them to the table and fight them? Because they don't come to the table. It's been proven time and time again. Your watchdog there is an organization like this so that you can be proactive instead of reactive. And proactive usually works a heck of a lot better and a heck of a lot cheaper than reactive.
Yeah, Commissioner mentioned, that was kind of the point I was trying to make. It's $5,000 a year. Any one of these issues, you're going to do nothing with $5,000 a year, even if you only have an issue every 5 years, right? What you're doing is you're partnering with your neighbor counties and counties across Kansas that allows this organization to exist. And I always stress again, it's county-based organization, right? You were partnering with counties across the state, currently 33. We've seen some growth the past few years, obviously, right? There's a lot of federal issues that have come up. At least those counties now have a place to go. They don't have to start from scratch, right? So that's where I see the value. It's easy to look at it like that. Well, we might not have an issue for 10 years. You're just flattening your cost, so to speak, and it keeps the entity alive and going, because you can't tune in that fast. And NETSI is a good point, because we had just engaged with a nationally renowned policy analyst to write the policy for Quivira, the water policy. That took 6+ months, I believe, to get on his workflow, right, to where he said it'll be however long before I can do this. Since we had already engaged with him, when the NETC came up, he fast-tracked that. He got us that policy in, I think, less than 60 days. We would have never even been able to have a policy to put forth to counties to then pass as policy and then tell the federal government, hey, this is our policy. This NETC is not in conjunction with that policy. Therefore, we want our seat at the table. Does that make sense? So, in other words, none of us ever would have gotten around fast enough to being able to really impact that situation. And that's the value of KNRC remaining in existence for $5,000 a year, right? Because if every county takes the tack that, well, we may not have it for a couple years, KNRC doesn't exist anymore. And when something does happen, no one has a place to live.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I haven't, until just of late ever heard of it, and I don't know if I've ever heard of it being a issue here.
Actually, the Quivira deal was part of that issue.
Yeah, we are part of the Quivira issue, which, so since you weren't a commissioner at the time, the water rights, it was a big deal for water rights in western Reno County, and the Quivira refuge does come a little ways into Reno County, and it would affect a lot of farmers on the edge of our county. They've been really useful, and I like the idea of what they're talking about, of being proactive with these agencies. I'm not sure what that looks like, but that's a really good idea. Probably I'll be talking with them.
It's kind of like an insurance policy, though.
Yeah.
It's there when you need it.
That's kind of how.
But also, okay, nothing against attorneys. I have some friends, and we just had to hire one for some issues with my family, and it was $7,000. So $5,000 to me is a lot of money, but it's not when you're looking at dealing. If you take the government to court, you don't have one attorney, you have a team of attorneys, and they're not inexpensive. So if we can split the cost through other counties, I would look at it as an insurance policy to keep us a little more protected.
But yeah, it's like insurance. Okay, you want to insure your trailer? Well, your trailer used to be insured by the truck you pulled it with. Well, then they say, well, no, now you got to insure the trailer itself. Well, actually, if it's if you're not wanting to value the trailer, you don't have to, because your liability is covered by the. So I mean, I'm looking at it like an insurance policy too. But I don't like insurance either, to be honest with you.
If I could add one thing too, one of the things that I commonly hear from our counties, and especially those that have been members for a long period of time, is that they like the collective voice. So that when we submit testimony, we submit comments, we can say we have a third of the state of Kansas in membership. I've given testimony at the state level in front of legislators, and when I walk in the room and say I represent a third of the state in counties, every single person looks up and wants to hear what we have to say, and it gives us a voice. One of our former board members used to say, one person can't take down Muhammad Ali, but 30 of us can. So,
I first heard about NRCS several years ago when I participated and listened to a phone conversation regarding to the trails program that the federal government said, okay, basically said, we're looking at, and we think we need to preserve all the old cattle trails coming up through Ellsworth, Dodge, Abilene, and many times in history they came to the cattle people that were driving cattle came to Nickerson to buy supplies. So you didn't know when and it was eminent domain. It wasn't any asking or anything else. And once they controlled that, you didn't know what was going to happen with your property. They owned it, and I thought that was overstepping again. And then the corridor came up with the electric corridor, another stepping. And to hear you talk about the butterflies.
And what about the long-eared bat and all these things that I promise you are not hearing about that are happening, being talked about, right?
I am
That's
really concerned with that's the instance, that, well, the ability for them to come in and tell you exactly what kind of grazing operation you have on your own property, is not good.
and
for,
permitted through an agency of their choice is the word I'm going to use, right?
that-
In other words, you're not permitting that from the federal government, you're permitting that from some third party that they have designated.
But we are in a
Right.
monarch flyway here.
Yeah.
So that does affect our region.
And the
Our
flip
county.
side of that, you know, like these trails and rails to trails, KNRC is not necessarily there to say we want it, we don't want it. What we're there to do is advise and make sure that you get a seat at the table, right? Or help you and advise you to get a seat at the table to where you have some say-so in how it goes down, if nothing else, right?
I love the trails, but
Yeah.
I don't want the government to own that my property to tail. And I think that's one of the things that really got me a little more interested in RCS. And we do, you know, you take about a mile north, I may be off a little bit on the exact geography, but about a mile north of Sylvia for about a township east, that's in that Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. It's not on your map here, but that's under there. They have some say within that. And I know that there's a lot of dollars in hunters and so forth that come into Reno County. And so it's good to have a seat I think it's good to have a seat at the table to look after your own interest and to convey your feelings to others and to come up with a sensible answer.
Right.
What I keep going back to is we provide membership to, like for the Kansas Association of Counties, they bring a lot of information to us, give us a arm in talking to the legislators and various other, for key personnel, we have organizations that we pay for to keep them apprised of the new laws, whatever's happening new. There is a void in this area that they're covering. And there isn't a one of us that doesn't know in 10 minutes whether we're going to spend $5,000 or not. Drive over the right deer antler and you got a $5,000 tire gone. You know, that's just the way it is. It's a lot of money and it isn't. You don't know from minute to minute whether you're going to spend that kind of money anyhow. And a lot of businesses you're trying to protect with $5,000. I'm done speaking my piece about it. You know how I feel.
Well, I think if we had to have Patrick do everything that they're doing,
If it really was a crisis like on the transmission line, I couldn't do everything that the person that they hired, the constitutional lawyer that they hired from out of state could do. I'm not, it was very specific. So I want to make that point. Like if it's a real crisis like that where we have to get that involved, that's beyond me.
well, and that's why I stated that, is the fact that, you know, you have what you do and your specialties and everything. And, but what they're doing, and I know, you know, like I said, even if you don't go to court, you still have to have attorneys write up the paperwork and everything else.
And finding them,
Yeah.
right? Being able to find the right person to do the job is a task in itself. And that network that KNRC has created, and Tracy has done a fantastic job with the past few years since she's came on, is reaching out and finding new, whether they're analysts or whatever. Hey, this is the very specific question, right? Who do we need to talk to? Somebody that already knows, right? And if necessary, can produce a product that we need, or at least get on a conference call or whatever. That's huge, because it might take a month to find the right person.
not too long ago, spent some pretty good money to get some attorney counseling that was more specific and had the expertise. Not saying Patrick doesn't have a lot of expertise, but this was
We're not picking on you.
was a specific area that we needed, and we spent just pretty close. No, we spent pretty close to that amount of money just to get that done, or at least a percentage of it. So that's just.
It's easy to go or spend. I just had to do that with a family member, 2 family members, my parents, but I needed an expert in a certain field, and it's $7,000.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a lot, but when it comes to your family, what are you willing to spend?
Yeah.
And we're talking about a lot of families here.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have a great deal of connection with the federal government.
Currently, no. I mean, and that's,
And maybe it's time that we do have somewhat of a connection. So I'll throw this out here so we can get on with it. And we can decide whether we want to spend the money and join KNRC or not. I'll move to that the Reno County join a membership with KNRC.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Any further comment, discussion? Help us out, Cindy.
I'm
Commissioner Vincent?
kind of on the fence on this one, but, I just don't, I'm treating it like insurance, I gotta say no.
No. Okay. Commissioner Winger?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogner?
Yes.
Thank you all, appreciate it. And Commissioner Vincent, I hope you'll get involved a little bit, and I think we can get you over your reservations and see the value. Okay.
I would like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for your time. Any further from us? Anything else?
Thank you for your time and your
Thank you.
presentation.
Have a good meeting.
I appreciate your hesitancy, Ron. I do, not that familiar, so I do appreciate that. And thank you
But
for
like
doing that.
There's nothing wrong in questioning it. But when I read the stuff I read daily and how our federal government's trumping on people's rights, I can just see it coming. And done deal. 7F. Randy, you got something to say?
Okay, this is a sign-on bonus policy. It kind of came up. This is really meant for specialized positions. To be eligible, need a master's degree or higher. It's really aimed at attorneys and APRN special positions that sometimes we have a hard time finding people to apply. We don't pay as well as the private sector, of course. So it got brought up by a couple directors and meeting with Helen of a possible policy. So this policy was drafted, and let me get down to the actual policy. The policy allows a department, the county, to give a sign-on bonus up no more than $5,000. Depends on if they're gonna work 40 hours or less than 30, to kind of help attract these specialized professional employees. And it does have kind of a clawback repayment obligation if it kind of sets them up for 2 years of a commitment. It's not a contract. They're not a contract employee, but it does, if they leave before the 23 months, they would have to pay some sort of money back to the county. And wanted to see if you guys were okay with this. That's kind of what the policy in a nutshell is.
Is this, countywide, Public Works, automotive,
No.
I mean, anybody?
Well, no.
No.
It's for any department, but those departments have to hire, it's really specified for professional employees. So really, someone that has a Juris Doctorate, a 3-year degree past bachelor's to get a law degree. And APRN, I think, has 6 years plus of college. Those are what it's really focused on.
Well, I think it's probably a good idea to, especially if they're gonna move one or two, but I mean, not just them, that side of our government, has problem getting help. So, I mean, I don't know why it should just pertain to a certain group.
We focused on this area because sometimes this is where we haven't.
Right.
But, and problem getting applicants, you're right, there's any department that has an opening, or most departments do have limited applicants. The automotive is a great example. Trying to get a mechanic for what we pay, we've been trying for months, and we're probably $15,000-$20,000 a year less than what mechanics are making at a private shop. But that's not an advanced degree, a mechanic, but it's a very specialized, but it's not included in here.
But
We could,
it's needed, I mean.
it is, and we could, if you guys want us to edit, we could take it back and make some modifications.
Yeah.
The way it's set up, this policy would really mainly be used by the health department and district attorney, probably the district attorney more, depending on turnover, because they do have more attorneys versus the health department has one APRN, one or two, so.
I would like to see it modified. I mean, I don't know what the rest of you guys think, but I would like to see it modified to where it's just not them few departments. It's where we need it.
And if we modify it, they do sign a contract
Yeah.
on repayment. Where you run into problems on deals like that is most of them are honest and know what they're doing, and they honor their contract. But in my limited experience, I've had one that didn't, and it wasn't worth our time to go get them. But we've got an attorney on staff.
Other places where we've done this, it is sometimes hard, yeah, when they don't stick around, we do have a clawback in here. It says if they leave early, they owe the money back. It's a loan that's kind of forgivable is how it, but yeah, in practice, you withhold it from the last paycheck usually, and then the balance due is a decision of whether or not how you're gonna collect that and what you're gonna do. And that's one thing I don't love about them. When they don't, when it goes well, it's great. Of course, when they don't go well, it's not very fun.
How's people already employed going to take it? Well, I didn't get that 5,000 when I signed on. You're kind of getting the people that already working. Are we going to upset them?
Any policy or any kind of bonus, these kind of things, there's always going to be people that don't get it and aren't going to be happy. And all of our employees are very essential and valuable. So we're not trying to value any employees over others. It's just sometimes with these professional degrees, it's harder to find these people.
Yeah, but would it be easier to say, hey, let's, we're not paying the salary to get these people. We got to start paying that salary. Instead of a bonus.
Well, yeah, we have a pay policy, and we have certain limitations of what we can pay people in different pay grades. We can go up, but if we go too far, then we kind of mess with the whole integrity of the pay plan. So we got to be careful there. But to make it, I guess, more fair to other employees, I would say we would modify this and have possible sign-on bonuses for more types of employment.
That's
An
what
example would be
I would recommend that.
if they have a CDL in Public Works, Don may have trouble finding a CDL. Maybe we give them, they get a sign-on bonus also. Now, anyone that's already currently employed, unfortunately, is already employed, so they won't get it. But new employees, depending on different qualifications, we could have that.
Well, I took a job one time in Kansas City. They actually got me a hotel room and then got a realtor to help me find a place to live, and they paid for all of that as part of hiring me. And that was a bonus to me, even though I didn't get a sign-on bonus. They helped me find, a place to live and good neighborhood.
Yeah, and we could do things like that, but we also have to be very limited because it is property tax dollars, and we're very careful with how we spend the property taxes.
My only thought would be, I kind of like this idea, but also if you've got somebody that's 20 or 30 years experience, has worked up their way, has learned lots of things, worked up their way in different areas to be more of a manager, a director, and that person doesn't have a master's or a PhD document, but has that master's or PhD experience, then to come in and maybe as a director or something like that, that not be excluded from that if they're heads and above everybody. If that's what it's gonna take a person to that you really want. That would be my only thought, is there needs to be a little bit of area, but I would limit, I trust administration to be able to differentiate that, but I would hate to see someone come in with vast experience and ability just because they don't have that piece of paper that says they're a PhD or you know what I'm talking about. They've got the really expertise.
Lived experience and experience is very valuable. So this policy is not meant to, exclude those people per se, but there are some jobs, the APRNs and attorneys, that have to have that. A lot of jobs at the county, whether it's in the job description or not, may not require a bachelor's, associate's, or master's degree, but there are a couple of jobs that do require it, and they can't practice, they can't do certain jobs without that. But that doesn't mean that we can't change this, modify this policy to allow for sign-on bonuses for everyone that, or not everyone, but other positions that are not related to an education. They may be a technical degree, they may be certifications, things that are essential to the specific job they're applying for, or 10 years of experience or whatever it is, but we can make modifications and bring it back to the commission if that's what you're looking for.
So that's the consensus, and we won't have a motion or just a consensus to go back. Am I reading this right?
I'm fine with that.
All right. We'll have our cohort with us here next go round, and maybe, hopefully, and we'll go on with that then.
Al, have you brought this before the employee committee too, to the directors committee and so forth, to get their thoughts?
This has been mentioned to directors. Didn't ask for too much feedback because it was very specific. It came up for specific jobs that we've been having that we have issues with over time. So, but modifying it, I will want to talk with more directors because each department will have specific requirements on different jobs they have. Not all the jobs they have, but again, within each department, there's a variety of positions that have specific qualifications that may.
And maybe they don't want to be placed in that position.
And I was just thinking about this relating back to our HPO, okay?
Right, yes, that's a good point.
Well, so we will visit this another time. Let's say we're ready for item 8. County Administrator Report.
So in the packet are the monthly reports for the district attorney, health department, human resources, IT, public works, treasurer, and youth services. Any questions on anything in the reports? Okay. All right, other items I have in my report. I wanted to mention I asked Commissioner or Chairman Bogner to sign a letter of support, but wanted to bring it to your guys' attention. The city of South Hutchinson this week requested a letter of support from Reno County as they're applying for a grant, a Kansas cost share program grant application for Main Street improvement project on their Main Street, basically from the bridge to the highway, all of their Main Street. They're needing $1 million from KDOT to restore the most critical corridor through a mill and overlay along with drainage and base repairs. So they asked for a letter of support. I did check with our public works director to make sure it doesn't conflict with any grants that he may be applying for. It does not. And so this has Chairman Bogner's signature. Wanted to bring it before you to see if there's any concerns or if you guys through consent are okay with us sending this letter to South Hutchinson.
It's no monetary.
So we have to have a motion on that.
I don't know.
Consent's good.
Okay, another item I wanted to bring up, I don't know if anything's happened, but I did forward everyone an email from the League of Kansas Municipalities about a legislative alert, just so you are aware that CCR 2125 is a property tax bill that the state may be voting on today. It does urge commissioners and everyone to contact local legislation. What's in this bill is not practical. It keeps the revenue neutral rate. It adds a mandatory election if you go over, but it also, one of the problems that I saw with it right off is it requires cities and counties and maybe school districts, I'm not sure on the school districts, to notify the county clerk by June 1st if they're going to exceed R&R. We don't, based on statute, we don't get our assessed valuation, our estimated valuation until June 15th. So we would have to know before we know our valuation if we're gonna go above R&R. It's not practical. And then the elections based on odd or even year are either in August or September. Each year is different. The counties are required to pay for all the election costs. So if any city goes above R&R within Reno County, we would be on the hook for the $20,000, $30,000, whatever it costs to hold the election every year. So it adds, it's basically a bill that the legislators really need to look at and modify quite a bit because it's not practical. I did send you an email, but I bring it up just so if you could look at that email and the legislators, if you have contacts with them, let them know that this is not practical.
Well, the other side of that, Randy, is apparently there are some people that watch us. We need their help. It's all citizens need their help.
Yeah, this bill also, I'm just looking kind of the bullet points. It also, there's a House Bill 2022, which is past conference committee. It's not been completely passed through legislature yet, but that prevents any special elections other than the first Tuesday in the month of March. So this bill that requires elections in special elections in August or September conflicts with another bill that they have coming before them. So just some maybe education of our local legislation of problems with this legislation if it comes to vote would be important for us to get to them.
Commissioner Bogner, I think you made a pretty good point. We're all concerned with taxes and cost and so forth. And when you first look at it, well, it's gonna save taxes, I'm gonna have a right to vote. Well, you do have, but it's gonna cost money in the long run. And like you said, the time frame just doesn't fit. And so you have to look at the whole bill and the whole effect rather than just on the top surface.
Anything? Well, Commissioner reports or comments. I think we started down here last time around. Richard, what do you got?
Well, I haven't, this week, past 2 weeks, I haven't had anybody call and complain really about anything, but I have been driving around in some different areas. I should clarify that. I did have one person that asked me about some dumping along 5th Street going out west of 4th Street. And instead of taking it to the landfill, they just been going to the side of the road, and they asked me about.
Richard, if you would.
They asked me about cleanup for that property, and I said, well, I didn't have an answer at that moment, but they shouldn't be dumping it. I'm sure that, you know, if they were caught by a law enforcement person, they would, you know, have a pretty hefty fine. So, but that's the only comment I had. But I've driven around, and I really think there's a lot of nice stuff being done around the county and through the county, and it's just been a good experience for me.
Ron, you got anything?
Yeah, had a text from a person out in the county, and it's the same thing I've been talking about for a long time. And I think we need to have some further conversations with regard to having a safe burns, as well as some conversations with the time of day that the winds reported. For instance, yesterday, had a fella take off from work to burn a little pile in his home, and wasn't allowed to because the wind was up at 7 a.m., but was down at noon. And I think we just need to have a way to get some common sense into these rules and regulations, and to look at them and have some serious conversations about our brush pile burning, and talk about the time of day that is interfering with the ability of citizens to be efficient about their use of time also, and still keep everybody safe.
Anything else? Ron?
Well, one, I had a call a week from last Friday about the wind in the landfill. I guess there's a rule that when the wind blows so hard, they're supposed to shut the landfill down. Oh, you're welcome there, Mr. Hurst. It was from your district. So,
I got a text on that also, and they did shut it down at 3:30, but maybe that could have been a little earlier.
Is there a, I thought I've heard something about they shut it down at a certain wind speed. Is there a certain wind speed?
There's a policy. It's, a few years ago, there was a December wind that hit Reno County really hard. We got a lot of complaints about trash, and as you know, trying to unload trash, dump the trash at the landfill, a lot of it will blow. Neighbors were very unhappy, so the county commission kind of authorized Megan and the land at solid waste to create an administrative policy, giving her authority to shut the landfill down if there's sustained winds. I believe it's, is it I thought it was around 40, 50, if it's going to be sustained for a long period of time, not wind gusts, but if it's going to be windy for long periods of times, she has the authority to look at what's coming in and the wind or the trash that's blowing outside of our property and make that decision. And she'll give notice to the public as much as possible, social media, press releases, to try to let people know.
So it's 40. I was, the impression I got it was 20, which I thought was.
It's not 20.
Was fairly low because it always blows 20.
Yeah.
40 or
This
50.
is
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty high. I think last week or 2 weeks ago was maybe the second time the landfill's been closed in the past 3 years.
And that's just common sense. You don't want to have to go out and pick up trash and then joining properties.
Right, and Megan has her staff, and then we hire temp workers to go out and walk the fields, walk nearby residences to pick up the trash that technically belongs to our landfill. So it takes a lot of extra time cleaning up, in addition to then trying to maintain the landfill when it's actually open. So that's why we have that. I received a call also that afternoon of, is this common? And went through the same process you guys probably did, is because of the wind that.
I said I'd ask.
Well, For me,
I'm a mile, half a mile to a mile away from it, so I
Watch
do.
that.
Well, that's all right. I worked with all the new commissioners when they came in too, so.
well, for my part, had a couple calls and stuff on the appraisals is still a big thing. I refer them to Michael, and I refer them to the document they have in hand that tells them how to appeal. We're all well aware of what's going on. We have homes and properties that are affected just as much as theirs are. It's one of those things that our appraiser is governed by state law on how he has to approach things, and he is audited on that, or a portion of it every year, and so as long as he's abiding by the law, we all need to suffer the consequences, or we just got to realize there's two numbers to that equation, and the other is the mill levy. The other thing, I had some, again with the burning, it's tough to get a time in Kansas when we meet the current criteria, at least this spring. The other thing I attended a conservation meeting, and Dr. McCowan, who also did the fence law about a year ago, did a presentation on water and water rights and how various things with water came about in Kansas and other parts of the country, which was very, very informative. And, like, who's got rights to a navigable river? Who's got, big thing happening right now is some states have given authority to people on unnavigable streams. They've claimed that. So the general public can just come on your property, cross your property. You can't fence the ends out, even though it's not a navigable stream. There's a lot going on in the ag sector that government is taking advantage of where they have no authority constitutionally. So, I mean, it's worth looking at a lot of this stuff, and a seminar like he gave is very enlightening. So if you get the right chances, it's worth your time. I accompanied my brother. He wanted to be there. He's on a water board, and very interesting to us. So keep in mind, folks, that there's a lot going on, and it isn't all to the advantage of our Reno County citizens, public works departments, what they can do to keep people from entering illegally to even navigable streams. I get complaints routinely along the river. It's an ongoing problem, been going on for a long time, and I just wish people would respect the law. It'd help a lot. So if there isn't anything more, I'm going to be quiet.
I just got one comment, and I know it's very important for farmers to be able to do control burns, and if you have a brush pile, and I understand that, but my son has a friend who graduated with him in high school, and they just lost their house west of Tulsa. Their whole neighborhood went up with that high winds. There was a spark or something, but it started a fire. So I would hate to be the farmer that was doing a controlled burn in a time period and the wind picked up and then ended up taking out a neighborhood. Of course, most of the farming land is wide open, so, but still, it only takes just a little mistake, and they lost everything they had.
But that is the problem.
Yeah.
Everybody's scared to maintain the properties. So scared that they don't maintain the properties, and then when high winds pop a couple wires together, whatever it is, we have these problems beyond our control. But yeah, there's always that balancing act. As to what you're saying, this week, Oklahoma just passed major laws on cleaning up these rangelands and putting a lot of money into it because they're in the same situation we are in places. It's all pasture land, and it's become overgrown with trees because, frankly, it's just hard to control. What controls it is fire, controlled fire, but everybody's scared to use it because of the liability issues. And if you want to get rid of the liability issues and hire a professional, good luck. There aren't many of them that have the insurance to do it. It's just a small pool, and it's about impossible to get somebody to do it. So, we good? I'm going to adjourn the meeting.